up, so we should be on in just a minute. Let's see. I can't tell if we're on live. Are we live over there?
Yeah, it says live on Facebook, up in the top right.
All right, so we are live and we are recording. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alan Kett. You are at the Museum of Graffiti's back office, and we are having a live talk tonight with artists that contributed to the American History Mural that is located right here in Wynwood, Miami. Tonight we have Tierra Armstrong, Black Brain, Wonder, and PhD as well. And we're going to get into what this mural was, or how it was created, what it is, what it means, and why we felt that we needed to create this special piece. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, have an open conversation with these artists, and we're going to show some of the images of the wall and the references that were created to be able to make this piece come to life. And so if you guys bear with me, we'll get into it. Everybody could introduce themselves and just let everybody know who you guys are, and we'll keep it going.
Well, hi, my name's Tierra Armstrong. I'm a local artist in Miami, and I've been living here for about 2 years. And I got brought onto the project to kind of add a female voice to the mural, and it was a pleasure working with these fine gentlemen.
Anybody else?
Brian. A Wonder here from Miami. I don't know, just a writer from here, illustrator. Brought in by Kat and all the guys and Tierra as well. Just a large collective effort. Grateful to be here. And it was definitely a great experience, learning from one another, as well as the research, the production, and just the overall conversations that were had all around this. So grateful to be here.
Black Brain, was raised in Miami, lived out in LA for a while, and came back a few years ago. My art forte is murals, illustration, some design work, and I've been doing a whole series of political art, and got brought into the project really to help with painting and with political nuance. PhD.
Hey.
Hey.
What's up, guys?
Hey.
How you guys doing? Sorry, I finally got this thing figured out, so I'm live now.
Enter yourself, sir.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
PhD, local artist here, trying to go global like everybody else. I think that public artwork is important. It's access to everybody. Anybody can be influenced by it. So that's one of my focuses. But other than that, I try not to hold myself to any one discipline. I just like to create in general. PhD, work is important. It's access to everybody. Anybody can be influenced by it.
Or
So guys, thank you for joining us today. This is really for us to be able to share with the world what we created, what you created here in Wynwood. We feel like it was a very important and monumental mural. And so we really want to be able to sort of get into it and talk about the why. Why was this mural created, and what led up to it. So for those of you that don't know, the Museum of Graffiti is located in Wynwood, which is a neighborhood in Miami. And we are surrounded by murals that we've produced and commissioned on our block and in the surrounding blocks. And so right across the street from the museum on Northwest 25th Street is where the American History mural is located. And we wanted to create something very special during the quarantine related to the pandemic as a result of many things. One of the reasons was the murder of George Floyd. And so, George Floyd's, murder at the hands of police really affected and impacted the entire country and the entire world. And it led to protests happening just about everywhere, including right here in Miami, where we're all located. And so we started to see all these images, and we started to see this protest movement sort of bubble and grow. And it was everywhere. And, from the point of view of the museum and for myself personally, it was important for us to get involved. It was important for us to contribute to this moment in time when we keep seeing more and more people of color killed at the hands of police. And so how do you do that when we're all in quarantine, when we're, maybe nervous about going out and contracting COVID and bringing it back home to a loved one? And so these images started to appear all over the world of protests. And then, of course, images like this one of, the police reacting to protesters. Here you could see them spraying or macing peaceful protesters. And this was affecting us. And so when we came together, it was as a result of this. This was a huge catalyst in the desire to create this mural. And we kept seeing these images. And so, guys, as when we first started to talk about this mural, one of the reasons or one of the questions that I had for you guys is how do you feel about what's going on? How do you feel about the protests? How do you feel about the police brutality and all these things that we're seeing? And that was sort of a way to gauge your willingness to lend your voice and your work to this mural in this time. Let's start with you, Tierra. What were you thinking and what were you going through just during these early months of this quarantine and when all this was going down?
Okay, so I think thinking back to those times, I would say it was a wave of different emotions for sure. You had the initial kind of upset and shock of what was happening, and then you wanted to be a part of the people, and then thinking about COVID and what that might mean for the elderly people that you're around, but you're like, I still have to go out and be a part of this movement because it feels like something that, I read about as a kid, and now it's my turn to be part of it. So we kind of braved it and we went out on the streets and we did it. And then you kind of being around all that energy, it creates a certain level of like, I could say I felt angry. I felt really, really angry. And as an artist, thankfully I have a resource to be able to channel that energy into something constructive. So when I got the call to be able to be a part of the project, I definitely jumped on it full force because that was a way for me to, get some of my angst and, create a positive channel for the feelings that I was feeling at the time.
And what about you, Paul? What was your head at?
I in many much the same way, I felt pretty outraged. I think that a lot of time there's an argument is this stuff more prevalent today, or are we just seeing more of it because of media, et cetera? And I'd probably say a little bit of both. And, as my career as an artist, a lot of times the things you're doing are self-fulfilling, trying to create very beautiful works or compelling or competing work to make yourself known. But as far as my call to this mural, it's very rare in life you get a call to use your talents for something that is something that'll make a substantial change. So that was the appeal to me. I wanted to do anything that I personally could do to contribute as far as expressing the voice that is being kind of thrown out there to the world right now.
Wonder, you came in as well and were able to contribute, throughout the mural. When you were seeing this going down, not the painting, but all this that was happening in this country, what was your reaction, and what got you to agree to participate?
Well, for one, it's primarily that it's nothing new as far as firsthand experience, having to deal with this shit and growing up here. Publicly, a lot of the stuff is, I wouldn't say downplayed, it's just not a part of everybody's existence or experience here. So taking a part in this and actually having the conversation, laying context to what many people, I guess would call belly aching, or kind of a fantasy sort of existence that a lot of people thought people were living, to put a microscope to it, not even a microscope, but even just to put a lens on it for a moment in time, to actually give a glimpse to the realities of the existence and how numb all of us, majority of us, are in dealing with these kind of occurrences that might be new in the face or the experience of a lot of Americans now. Just to do something to highlight it, to make it to just kind of make it a commonplace, as it is for many of us, including myself, day to day as a kid all up until now. It was almost my duty to take part and to participate in this and to grow and build and research and grow and learn from all the artists and the individuals and the minds that were involved in this whole project.
Black Brain, what was your take on it, and what convinced you to jump on this project?
Yeah, for me, the initial response was like, here we go again. It seems like every 4 years, this kind of thing kind of resurfaces. And on a personal level, it's like any of those guys could be me, driving home from the studio. I'm coming home from the studio like 3 or 4 in the morning, like who knows what could happen. And right before the call, I had paused from doing political artwork since 2017, and I started again, and it was in this very like visceral, like from the streets kind of perspective. And the call just reminded me of, hey, let's look at our heroes too. It's like, let's look at the beauty, let's look at the growth, let's look at the diamonds that are formed during these times, and the people that make a standout from the regular crowd, and become leaders for our communities. And that was really healing. It was a really great opportunity to look at the positive, not just the anger.
Yeah, it was. As we got into doing this mural, and we're sharing images at the moment of those murals, and so, of the entire mural. So you can see, for the audience, the entire American history mural here, and then we'll zoom in and look at a few of the letters, and we'll go through these one at a time, so that for folks that are not in Miami and that haven't been able to visit this, you can see the content that's inside every single letter. And so this particular mural, it spells out American history, and it goes across 2 buildings. It's over 120 feet long, over 16 feet high. It has images of men and women within each letter that have either, suffered as a result of racial injustice and oppression, or became a leader and a resistor to oppression and racism in this country, or maybe fell victim to violence as a result of the color of their skin. And so here you see the whole entire mural, and in person it's quite dramatic. The yellow is bold, like the police caution tape. The imagery is all grayscale, and it is giant. And so when you look at these details, these a close-up of this, you'll see what I mean. And so we're going to dive into each of these letters specifically. We're going to share with everybody some of the source imagery, so the history that we learned as we went through and worked on this mural. You can see some of the things, and we'll talk about some of the things that everybody got to experience and have to sort of deal with as artists, looking at, you know, research material and learning about this and reference material to jump into it. And so the mural starts in the 1850s, in the early 1800s, and we talk about slavery, or we start to get into a conversation about slavery. So when we started to do this research, we had lots of conversations around what should be in it. What should we cover? Who should we cover? And should we start here or should we start earlier in time? And we ended up landing on the 1850s, since we're also very concerned with how much we could possibly do and throw in to this mural with the amount of time and the budget that we had allocated to do the work. And so, you know, one of the pieces or one of the moments in history that we landed upon was Nat Turner, and sharing Nat Turner's story, or you know, showing Nat Turner as a resistor. And so this image that we are seeing here is the image of this moment in time, you know, with this particular spin on it. Obviously, for those that don't know some of these moments of history, I invite you to look into it and to learn, much like we had to learn and we got into it. But Nat Turner was a slave who escaped and massacred, you know, 75, or I don't know, maybe 75 or 60 something people in Virginia in 1831. And it was an incredible moment, a really horrible moment in history for everybody involved, but it sort of shows just how painful the existence for Nat Turner and other slaves were, that they had to turn to murder to be able to escape their lives. And we get into, also we shared images of Harriet Tubman, an image of Harriet Tubman that was a resistor and escaped and helped others escape, and slavery. And here you have a picture of the cotton fields, and you can see sort of an overseer in the back on a horse.
Officer.
You know, and then John Brown, who's an abolitionist. And here you have a white man who was disgusted by what he saw, and he went and waged war, him and his sons, and they were ultimately murdered or killed for being abolitionists. And so when we got into this, you know, there was this huge wall, and here you see you guys working. When you guys were confronted with this material and the subject matter and the scale of the wall, did you have an initial reaction? Were you intimidated? Any of you guys intimidated by this process or by this project?
I would say I was more so, I got in my head as far as the climate, the social climate, and what we potentially might have to encounter while producing the mural. I think that might have been a big part of where my mind was. As far as the actual scale, I was like, man, there's so many capable and talented people here. I'm sure we could get this thing done, you know? But that was the only thing for me mentally when we first took on looking at that wall. I mean, it was a large task, but yeah, I knew we could knock it out.
Personally speaking, I felt an enormous responsibility to tell the right story, to show the right people. And, you know, I'm learning as a member of this community and this group. And so the discussions that were had about the material itself were pretty eye-opening to me personally. So in terms of the wall and intimidation, I just felt a responsibility to really do something that would speak loudly. So I'd add that.
Yeah, I would say for me, the biggest thing was making sure that uh, the ugly truth was also talked about. You know, that we didn't just fluff it over with the pretty things. And I was my initial concern would be that we highlighted the heroes but never showed any of the causes. And you know, that was squashed the first meeting after seeing like the people that were chosen to be painted. And I was like, yeah, this is gonna be
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. I would agree with you on that point. I think when we were coming up with the images, we wanted to have a good mix between like scenery and people and places and times, and like really telling this story that could flow very well and had all of like, not all of them, we couldn't put all of the key pieces, but you know, the vital information points that people needed to see. It was a large responsibility on our backs. And going back to what Evan said was all like, it was interesting because as a female artist, I very rarely run into any kind of trouble when doing work outside, indoor, whatever. So hearing y'all's perspectives on what maybe the police might do while we're painting, or the feedback or backlash that we might get was really interesting for me. And you know, it was eye-opening to hear what y'all go through on a regular basis.
The process of coming up with the imagery and working it onto the wall was not an easy process.
I mean, we're showing right now, like there's some key people that we lost, you know?
Yeah.
There was, I thought that this mural would take a week to paint. I think it took about 3 weeks to paint. There were lots of great ideas, and then things got scaled down and changed. You know, it was very much, it wasn't improvised, but the beginning was it was a bit bumpy, I think. And this
Very
image, I
passionate.
think, speaks to that. And this particular image, you see the letters getting filled in with these figures, but then you see outside of the letters also getting in with figures. And I think, you know, we had a difficult time sort of paring down the subjects. We really wanted to do so much. It's, you know, this is such a big, an important subject. And to talk about responsibility, you know, Paul, you're talking about responsibility. Everybody felt very responsible. This was and is a monumental protest piece in the city of Miami, and frankly, in the world. You know, I look around at what people are doing. This is a very different type of mural than what anybody has done in the entire country. And so,
but you got to understand the gravity of cutting those people. Like Frederick Douglass had to go, and how hard that was, right? And so for me, the real shocker is we had 137 feet, and we still couldn't put a fraction of the people that have sacrificed. You know, that's what is shocking to me, because in a visual representation, it's like, man, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, agreed. In the same token, you know, it was kind of just laying context for the conversation to be had in living rooms and so on, right? So it kind of, even though, you know, it sucks that the conversation had to start with brutality and the murder of a particular man that catalyzes this conversation in a lot of households. But laying that context, and you know, Kat and the team, as far as selecting that imagery to help kind of give context to the whole story, how do we get to where we are now? I think everybody did a great job, man, as far as selecting the right imagery, kind of keeping that whole sort of chronological sort of context building for the entire story. Selecting the right imagery. That was an amazing job on everybody's part there.
I agree.
You called out. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add that one of the things that came out of there, part by planning and part, you know, just like the way the dice rolled, which like really hit hard only afterwards, after it was all done and you got to see it all, is that this whole thing, like the way we started it, was incited by by violence. And then the way it ended was reminding us of the violence with George.
Circle.
That's right. And I mean, in this image that I have up on the screen now, to the left side of the letter A, there's an image that didn't make it.
Yeah.
And Black Brain, you were working on this.
Yeah.
There's also within the letter E and the letter R, other images that didn't make it. And so, Frederick Douglass didn't make it. On the left side, it was the Black Seminoles. They didn't make it. The KKK didn't make it. And so there was this editing that started to happen.
They found their way
on the wall, which is, it gave everybody more work to do. But I think, it was an interesting process to witness creatively coming together and then really having to scale it down a bit, to tell a clearer story or a more concise story. And so for the audience that's seeing it, this was part of the challenge in painting this wall, because there was such a sense of importance, of responsibility, because so many people walk on this block every single day. So many people, thousands of people come, and actually to this particular corner, because it's situated where the Wynwood Walls is and the Museum of Graffiti. Millions of people will see this wall in person once COVID is done. And so I understand the weight, and I felt everybody, feeling the weight of the responsibility. And I really am thankful that everybody was up to the challenge. And so here you see the wall filled with lots of imagery after the first few days, and it had started to come together. It still hadn't been pared down here. You still see the 68 Olympics in between the letter A and the letter N. The scene of the police with dogs sort of attacking people between the letter C and the letter A. All these images. Did anybody feel that we took the wrong route in eliminating these images, or anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah,
I would say
yeah.
go for it.
No, I was gonna say that once the conversation of what we were trying to communicate was clear on everyone's tip of their tongue, I think the decision was a no-brainer and awesome, and that was that it was really about American history being immediately legible, so that we can get into the nuance of what these people have done to propel the history of America forward.
I think one of the things that helped us sort of narrow this down is when we decided that we would include QR codes. That was a way for us to extend the learning. For me, with my museum hat, I think of how we can deliver some education, deliver further, like a deeper experience. And so coming up with the idea of adding QR codes that would unlock video and music and speeches made it a little bit easier to subtract some of the content from the walls. And I think another important thing, and we'll get into this, is the idea of adding words within the letters, adding these phrases to be able to speak to other moments in history. Because when we started doing this, each letter sort of was almost a time period. And how do you put a decade in a letter that is so loaded with history? Not so easy. And again, so for the here you see artists at work, and the artists that made this mural are more than the four that are here on this talk. And so you have Kale in the image on the left. You have Seiss and Etone on the image of the right. We had sporadic interns coming in and random assistants, people pulling over in their car and jumping out to help for a little while. And so there was a communal vibe that was happening on the wall. And just to show everybody what I mean, you have it here. And some of those things didn't make the cut, right? Because we were improvising and experimenting on the wall in real time. And here you see Cash 4 coming in, and we had the idea of maybe writing one of the tenements of the Black Panther Party in between the letters. We had this idea of pushing back copy into the background of the yellow, but it didn't quite make the cut. So here you see some of the things that just didn't quite make it. But now let's get into the what did make it. And so here's the complete and final letter A. We have John Brown, we have Harriet Tubman, we have Nat Turner. Here is the complete letter M, which the focus of the letter M is the Tulsa Massacre and the Rosewood Massacre. And just for those that don't know, and you know, this letter was worked on by a few people, but Black Brain and also Wonder, you guys did most of what you see here. And this is a very, very tragic, two tragic moments in American history, and in particular in Black American history, like truly horrible moments. Yeah. When we got into doing this and deciding that this was the moment in time that we were going to place on this wall, were you guys already, you know, very familiar with this moment in time? And how did you feel about going in and looking at this material and all over again, even if you did know it?
Yeah, no, Black Brain, produced a majority of that imagery there. I just kind of helped out with the letters and some of the color balance in there, or the grayscale balancing. But yeah, I happen to be very familiar with it, being that I grew up in a family full of academics, right? So my older brother being a historian, and you know, both my parents being teachers as well, and just being very, I guess, learned in these particular kind of instances, you know, regrettably. So with Tulsa, I mean, you have a whole community of people during a particular time where it was like, okay, we can't get separate but equal, build your own, right? So they build their own, start building, and start to excel on their own accord, using and sourcing their own resources. And neighboring communities are just kind of like, nah, man, fuck that. Y'all are doing too well for yourselves. Let's blow up the entire fucking town. I mean, you know, and it's not, you know, it's not the first time. It's just one in particular that stood out. It happened every fucking week in this country, you know. Still happens today. It's just there's cameras now, right? So with Rosewood here in Florida, Tulsa in Oklahoma, it's a part of the entire narrative, and it's so powerful. Like I went home after seeing, you know, I left to go out of town for a while. So I only worked on a bit as far as the concepts with you guys, and then coming back to work on letters and stuff. But the magnitude of the work produced, man, and just the power of the imagery, man, especially this particular one that Rel produced here, it's kind of breathtaking, man, when you really think about what it represents, man, you know. And I kind of never really dove into it until after the mural was done and actually internalizing and taking a look back at all these things that, you know, I've become so numb to. Man, just to get home and think about entire communities wiped off the face of the planet for being self-reliant blows my fucking mind to this day.
I agree. The fact that it was considered such a threat that you bomb a whole city, you know, it's pretty wild to me, you know,
on United States soil, like over
exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
You know?
That's the whole thing, and people don't.
So would they do it again, or you know, Exactly.
Of
Exactly.
course.
So,
It's done in Puerto
great.
Rico too, you know, in the 70s and 80s. Say, you know, well, you know, the conversation got to start somewhere. It's a grateful. This is awesome, man.
And to transition that information into a piece where like what do you communicate? You know, is it like that anger, that volatility, that you know, and I think we landed on grief, you know, because that's really what it is. That's the human part. Like, hey, if we can focus on the grief, so it's like, yeah, we're showing this blazing fire. It's animated. It's erratic, you know, but it's still abstracted, and you know, you can lose yourself in the smoke. We're really like landing on, you know, data as a minor, but the main thing is the grief, you know, and all the volatility on the bottom really like just gave you a nice contrast when you get to like this soft grief. You know, it's not like super detailed. It's more about this overall emotion. And yeah, and then the letter is like this mad clean, Wonder went in the smoke and made it even more detailed. Like I'm pretty sure he added a few skulls because I see him, you know, like it was.
I feel the grief in this letter. I feel
Yeah.
pain when I'm looking at this. You know, when I think of these two incidents in history, these massacres, and I look at this image and knowing all the other images that exist, it's heartbreaking. It's incredible. It's truly a deplorable and despicable part of American history, and that many people don't necessarily know about. People hear of Tulsa a bit, and they hear of Black Wall Street, and now people have heard about it more with as a result of Trump going there to do a speech on Juneteenth. And so what was, which most people found to be despicable, but I think that it led people to maybe do some research and learn a little bit about it, which is interesting. And I find it to be powerful to keep this information alive and to keep this moment of history alive, although it's despicable and terrible. So people do not forget that this kind of stuff happens here. You do not have to point the finger at China or Myanmar or Vietnam or wherever. It's happened here. It happens here in this country. And I also applaud, recently I watched this series called The Watchmen. And The Watchmen was around, and to your recommendation, Black Brain, it was your recommendation to watch it. I finally watched it, and it starts with the Tulsa massacre, like the whole series. And so it really was, to take a graphic novel and to add to it and provide this history. I loved it, and I can't even believe it. And so then we get into this, which is the Klan that were part of both massacres. And you have here, a rally in Washington with the Klan, where I think in this particular reference, there were 13,000 Klansmen that marched in Washington. And you hear and you see the badge, and then you see the images of these men in stripes, prison camp. Do one of you want to comment on this image and just what it meant to see this and deal with this?
I think the first time that, I'm sorry, I think the first time you come across the images of the two badges side by side, when doing research, it always kind of like hits you like a ton of bricks. Like, of course, this is what's happening right now because this is what it was created for, essentially. That's what two images kind of so plainly spell out, which I felt was like it needed to be on the mural because it so plainly says it for the light of day of what it is. And what we're trying to communicate is like, this is the history. This is what the things were built off of. And this is where we are today. And this is why we need to dismantle it and create it new, because, you know, the foundation came from runaway slave patrol.
So by the way, I said 13,000, and it was actually 30,000, over 30,000 plants marched in Washington. This image is from 1925. And I want to just sort of just show that just for a moment so that folks could understand. It's not like we're making this stuff. We're not making this up. This is real life, you know, business here, real life moments. And here you see what I'm talking about. And if you can see this, you'll see what I'm talking about, right? So here we have
apple pie. That's what we got.
Is everybody seeing this?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yes,
To me,
sir.
it kind of represents how institutionalized the hate is, and how it kind of birthed the prison industrial system, and you know, shaming people or classifying people, and it all started somewhere. And
So not to give these people that much play, but I want people to understand that this is America.
Yes, it is.
Right? This is America. And look at not just the crowd that's marching, but the crowd that is witnessing.
Yeah. If there's 30,000 participants, there's easily probably what 200,000 people in total. Let's call it that. And that's all in support. You know, if you're there to protest, I'm pretty sure you didn't want to get stomped out by a bunch of people in sheets. So, you know, it's just to get perspective. And this is, you know, not for nothing, you know, everybody can grow and change. But this is everybody. There's a lot of folks, grandparents, their uncles, and all that other shit that are still around today. So, you know, let's just put that in perspective. It's not to make people, you know, feel any kind of way or anything. This is a real live breathing organism that isn't even real. It exists in our minds. But other people have to, you know, carry the receipts and the ass whoopings and everything behind this, and even the fear, you know, beyond, you know, somebody screaming at you at a fucking rally trying to get your votes. You know, the fear is real. It's paid for in ass and flesh, man.
When people come to this wall and they scan that particular image, the QR code that's there, it takes them to Ava DuVernay's 13 film, which speaks about the laws that were changed with the 13th Amendment. And it's the Emancipation Proclamation, where you're supposed to be free, but things changed to make people not free. And that really started the sort of prison industrial complex, the prison pipeline, from slavery to prisoners with laws that were rewritten. And so that is really the reason why you see these two badges, because the government, both local and national, were playing with people's lives, with the laws. And, you know, I think one of the things that's important for all of us to understand is how insidious this is, and how the government and the politicians and the businessmen that they're in cahoots with will change things in order to benefit themselves and hold on to these old belief systems to profit from them. And
It's crazy. It's like right in the name, right? Police officer meant policy officer.
Yeah.
You're enforcing the policy.
that's right.
Executors of laws, right? So you put stuff on paper and the bylaws of a land, a state, a city, or what have you. And this is literally the executors of said laws, right? That's the executive branch of the government. So if you can put it in paper, representing the majority of the property owners or the people who influence policy or what have you, then guess what the people in the executive branch have to do? they have to execute the policy. So if it's illegal to be born the way that we, are by various means, well, fuck it, man. What do you expect people to do?
So moving on to the letter R, we have Marcus Garvey, we have Harriet Moore, and we have Harry T. Moore. And again, this is another powerful letter. Here we focus on 3 images of important people in this country, and incredibly rendered. Marcus Garvey is just such a wonderful portrait done by PhD. And I remember you doing this, and all of it, really came together. What were you thinking about, like knocking out this Marcus Garvey portrait?
Again, I'm trying to do the best by the person, and I do portraits by nature. So a lot of times you'll do somebody of little significance. So again, when you look at the stock images, the photos from then, he just strikes me as such a strong, imposing, like just righteous dude. And I had to portray that, so I kind of characterized him like a little bit bigger, like. So if you actually look at the image himself, he's a little larger than life, because, in discovering his persona, character, history, what he did, like, I don't know, I kind of wanted to make him real, big, so that was part of it.
It's wonderful. And then, we have Harriet Moore and Harry T. Moore, who many people might not know. They are Floridians. They are from South Florida, and they did amazing work here in the 1940s and going into the 1950s. They started the first NAACP chapter, and they were both murdered by the Klan. And when we discussed this wall, and we were guided by some advisors, some historical advisors, some academics, one being Dr. Paul Ortiz. And we wanted to include local history so that people here understood that it's not just Ferguson, that it's not just Atlanta, right, where this happens. It's not just Fruitvale Station, that it's here. And so this is Marcus Garvey, and we won't get into so much detail since we don't have hours to discuss, but this is their home. This is Harry and Harriet's home after it was bombed by the KKK, and this is them, a young photo of them. They registered over 100,000 African American voters in the state of Florida to vote because they believed in the power of vote, to vote the Klan out, right? Vote the white supremacists out. And they paid for it with their life, but they made a difference. And so we honor them by including them in this mural, and the same with Marcus Garvey. And then we move to the letter I, and we have here Rosa Parks, and we have Emmett Till. And I remember, Tierra, you saying that you wanted to paint Rosa Parks. Why was it important for you to paint Rosa?
I guess, especially having gone to school overseas, she's probably a lot of people's first introduction to our fights and the movement and what we've been going through for so long. And she's such a clear symbol of resistance. That's what most people know her to be. She's synonymous with the word resistance. And I think that was a big part of the story that we wanted to tell with this mural. So I felt like it was important that I depict her in a very strong and solid fashion. So for me, it was important to paint her on the wall, for sure.
So here you see Rosa, right?
Yeah, you crushed that, man. It's awesome.
And then the image that you referenced, and she's holding up her sort of the number for her arrest. This is a mugshot, which I thought was an interesting choice. Not necessarily maybe the known picture or the scene of the bus, but her mugshots a bit showing you and the world, you know, that she was arrested for what she did.
Yeah, I guess because, you know, we see the image of her sitting on the bus, and she kind of, it almost feels like, you know, she did this symbol of resistance, and, you know, then the march happens and everything was kind of peaceful, when no, she really had to pay a very vital price for it, and she was about that life. She took that photo with pride. She was like, I'm gonna go to jail, and I'm doing it for a reason, you feel me? So
Right.
I
How
felt like
scary.
it was important to show that side.
And mind you, all that was happening. What was that? 1955.
Yes.
I mean, think about that, man.
Right.
That's it's like what, like maybe 50, 60 years ago? Like that's younger than our parents.
Well, speaking of that, you know, the image above Rosa is an image from the Selma
Mhm.
uh, march.
Mhm.
So again, another important moment in history, which, you know, sort of carries over into the next letter, to the letter C, when we get into Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, this image of the march, 16th Street Baptist Church. This particular letter is very loaded with content, and you know, and it's not only just loaded with content, but it has pipes and boxes in it, and to me, it was, you know, watching being painted, it was not an easy letter to paint.
The PhD killed that portrait of Martin. I think it was awesome.
Yeah.
Malcolm came out amazing as well.
I did Malcolm. Martin was. I can't take credit for Martin. I think maybe that
That's
was
Kale?
Kale. Yeah. But the pipe, the
Both
box.
of those are awesome, man. I mean, that's skill. Yeah, just like Kat was saying, man. That's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just thought I'd tackle it first because it was the worst one, and the face lands
Nah.
square on the box and the pipe. So if I
I'll
can
tell
get
you
that
right
one,
now, we're all very happy that you did that.
Hell yeah.
Any of us would have done the job you did.
I got
Oh,
you,
man.
Doug.
And so here we introduced quotes as well, and more you know, wording to be able to add more content into it. So when you come in here, you could understand there's things going on, and this is 1963, and we want to be able to have the viewer dive into this more and get more information. There was so much things. There were so many things happening, and some of the reference imagery, and you know, John Lewis made it in here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
John Lewis is the man on the right who recently passed away. He's there, and you can see him right here as a young man to the right, on the right side of the image.
That's right.
And there he is again, just for more historical context, and look, this is what people were dealing with, just like today. And here is some, you know, here's Black Brain at work. So you see, like, it wasn't, this was a real production, ladders, lifts, all of it.
And it was freezing cold outside, man. So cold.
You can see it in his flip flops and his slides.
I don't recommend you do that. Wear shoes.
Oh yeah, trust me. Wear shoes. Wear shoes.
Again, this moment in time, we get into the letter A, and we have Huey P. Newton, Angela Davis, Muhammad Ali. We're continuing into the 1960s, and this is, you know, when I look at the images and the history that we're sharing, it could be, it's today. It's like we're stuck in a time warp where things seem to not be changing. And so
Yeah.
just to share some of the reference images, here you have Huey P. Newton, you have Angela Davis, you have Fred Hampton, and you know, the images that we landed on are some more of the iconic images to share so that they could be instantly recognizable from a distance. And so to pull you into the mural so that you want to get the content, so that you want to stop and take a picture. And when you look at this image, Angela Davis was purposely placed there so that folks could come and stand and take a picture next to Dr. Davis, which I think is incredibly powerful.
Oh yeah.
She's such a counterculture figure, such a true revolutionary. And people use all these words today with very bad connotations: communist, Marxist, leftist, progressive. She's all of that, and with pride, because she knows what it means and sees a different vision of the world than the one that we're living in today. And so we didn't dance around some of these complex historical figures. We jumped in and told the truth with all their complexities. And so as we move into the letter N, we have Arthur McDuffie, we have Eleanor Bumpers, we call out the Miami riots, and we call out MOVE. And for those of you that don't know about this history, I really stress to you to jump in and learn what it is. And if you go on the Museum of Graffiti's YouTube page, we have videos that are the reference videos that are in all of these QR codes that are scanned. They're all there. And so if you want to jump into any of this history, you could just go to our page and you can see all the videos that you would normally see in person if you scan them. And again, for those of you that don't know, here's Eleanor Bumpers, a Bronx resident that was killed by police. And this particular quote that divides the words American and history is so powerful, is so right for today with the political climate that we have, with a racist president. Can anybody comment on this? This was not, we went back and forth trying to really figure out what to put on there. And I remember Paul really, you and I really talking about this in extensively, and on the fly, this was the decision. Why?
Well, there's a lot to say, right? And so we have this gigantic mural. We got, I don't know, 100 years in every letter. We're eliminating extremely important people. And then you have the focal center point of the entire mural. And, you have to have something to say, something poignant, something that speaks to the overall message. And for me, when you were sharing some of the quotes and I was helping you guys eliminate some of them, it was just like, what is the right thing to say? And so for me, in terms of my own personal stance, politics aside, you can be a Republican and be a great guy. You can be a Democrat and be a great guy. But I have a hard line stance on racism, period. That doesn't change with my political affiliation or how I'm going to vote. But this image also definitely rubs people, a certain way. And, sometimes just saying the word racism on its own is just ugly. But if you can't talk about it, maybe it might be the impetus you needed to kind of, go search inside or kind of see what it says about you if something like this really triggers or elicits an emotional response from you other than, yeah, I get it,
Right.
This is photographed every single day that land on this block. There's people stand in front of it, stand next to it. They have a Black Power fist salute in front of it. I mean, this really resonates with people that come to the block, and I think it's perfect, and it really does speak to what we're dealing with the turmoil that exists in this country today. And with the way it's that race is so politically charged when it really doesn't need to be. It is what it is. And so as we move into the word history, we have the LA riots. and we have a very good-looking Rodney King here.
Yeah.
Right?
Beautiful.
Got like Jerry curls in effect, and then you have the images of the jurors, which I love. Black Brain, when you did this, why did you add the jurors?
We were looking at this piece and the one next to it and the one before with McDuffie, and we were just seeing that there was a lot of like portraits, and we were kind of losing our rhythm in like some of the more scenic storytelling. So we wanted to tell the narrative of Rodney King, because what's really amazing with Rodney King and with McDuffie, that it's one of those points that only after the mural did I really learn so much about, and I came to really appreciate, the Black community and how they're protesting, is that usually a riot happens right after a death. Both of these riots, the community let the justice system work, do their job. And it's only when that social contract was forfeited that the riot started. So that was like, it was that, it's like showing that it was more about the injustice more than of the justice system, not the injustice of the police system, because we knew who the police were from the beginning.
Right.
But the justice system was supposed to have our evidence back.
And it carries on into the next letter. And what I want to show everybody who might not have the history of this moment, and might not know it, it's here you have look at the amount of police.
Where?
So this is what
I'm not seeing it, by the way.
that's what that's about. And so you're not seeing it?
No.
I didn't.
Exited the screen.
I just exited. Did anybody see that or no?
No.
No.
Oh man, so we're going to go back and we're going to replay that, because it is very important for folks to understand what I'm talking about. So just give me 1 second here, and here we go.
There we go.
Are you seeing it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, I remember being a kid seeing this.
I know. Kale said he was in LA during all this.
What did Mike say? All I want to say is that they don't really care about us.
True. This was just the first,
It's nonstop. It's just the first.
Yeah, Fruitville.
First, there you go, for those that don't know. And so it is a horrible moment that we captured, but the way that it was captured, because what you said, Black Brain, was right. It changed when the police were acquitted, when the justice system failed to deliver true justice. And so that's for those that don't know the history. That's really what that story is about. And it carries into this next letter, the letter I, with
Super powerful.
the gavel smoldering. And that's to the point that justice is not always delivered. And so there's the image behind it of Public Enemy's logo. And so if you guys don't know who Public Enemy is, I highly recommend to learn who this band is. And if we had more time, I'd share their music. But I think that we will just share images um, of some of the bands and some of the, the groups that were creating music that sort of challenged, that were reacting to police brutality and the injustice that was happening around the country. And when we were talking about this, we tossed names around of who should be included. And, we talked about NWA. I remember us bringing up X-Clan and this whole Stop the Violence movement. But I think that landing on the Public Enemy logo, which is a man in crosshairs, is exactly, and you can see it there on Spike Lee's chain. It made a lot of sense. We have the letter S, which is honoring the memory of Amadou Diallo. There you see Tierra painting it and using spray paint.
Hey,
Killing it.
And so I mentioned that because, Tierra, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a new tool for you. Is that correct?
Yeah. Like I've never completed a piece in just spray paint. I'm very, very new to the craft. So I thank the boys again and again for giving me all the tips when I was up there, for sure.
And the final piece, there you see Amadou. And then for those that don't know anything about Amadou Diallo, again, this is a man, an African immigrant in the Bronx that was murdered by the police. He was unarmed and they shot him 41 times. And it really, you can see the headlines. Tragic. This was 1999. We fast forward with the letter T, and we have Trayvon Martin and the Black Lives Matter protester here. And this is within recent history. So we're speeding along on this timeline. But here you see a teenager, and you see, the reference image. And again, the tragedy of being Black in America when you meet a police officer, or in his case, a wannabe cop, that sort of, what do you call them now? The Karens or whatever, right? And so he met George Zimmerman, who was Karen-like. And
The worst human on the planet.
Really terrible. And then,
oh man,
2014, Mike Brown, Eric Garner, and it doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. And here, for folks that don't remember, look the amount of people, the amount of cops restraining this man for
selling Lucy's.
Yeah, single cigarette.
Selling a loose cigarette. Incredible. And so we move into the letter R, who's painted by Hale, if I'm correct, right?
That's right.
Yeah. He painted a bunch of those. So he's not here tonight, but he is one of the most incredible artists ever. Like a lot of those ones you see on the wall that look amazing. That's Kale. So shout out Kale, man. You're incredible.
Yeah, big old Kale, man.
Kale,
awesome.
West. And so, Colin Kaepernick makes it to the wall because, like it says in the wall, he decided to take a stand. And when it seemed like, nobody in the public eye would do such a thing, and it came to him with a great sacrifice, and that sacrifice was his career. He's still not playing, and so here you see him, early on, and today, actually now, a lot of professional athletes are taking a stand, and it's quite incredible to see how far these people that are in the public eye have come. Like they get it.
Like
I
shut
think-
down, like games shut down.
Well,
Yeah, and so he's quite a courageous figure to do that. And then we end on this letter Y, and it says, "I can't breathe." You have Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and again, like the image of the saying in the middle, in between the two words, this letter and this image is highly photographed. People stop. This stops people. You see this as you drive down the block. This mural is directly in front of a street. The street hits this mural, and you have to turn right, so you can't get away with it with not seeing it if you're coming down Northwest Third Avenue in Miami, and you directly see the letter O, the letter R, the letter Y, and people really engage with this image of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor because this is in the now, and you know it's wonderfully rendered portraits.
Amazing work, guys.
Truly amazing works. And you know, I want to, you know, we don't have much time. You know, I want to wrap up this and you know, share with you know, everybody. With, you know, we know these things. We're all paying attention, and I think that, you know, perhaps, you know, we're a bit sensitive to this. It's too much. If you're not sensitive to what's going on, I feel like you're not really paying attention
At all.
or you're not here. I don't know. And so since this mural was painted, a lot of stuff has happened. Just it's nonstop, right? In Atlanta with Rashard, it's incredible. And then you have Jacob Blake just a few days ago. I mean, it's really insane what we're witnessing. And so, you know, I bring that up because just because it's not in the news doesn't mean that it's not going on. Just because the protests might be over in your city doesn't mean that it's not going on, and that we all have to be very aware of this. It's a continuum. I mentioned before that it seems like we're stuck in a time warp.
Yeah.
70 years of the same thing.
But I believe in momentum, you know, so if you let these things die down, you know, the force of the actions aren't exponential. They don't have the same impact. And so you see these sort of resistance in history over and over again. And my only hope is that this last push with all the media, with everything out there, I mean, hopefully you can actually make some serious, real systemic change. You know, that's all I hope for.
It's that and the kids, man, you know, that's really and truly, we just holding ourselves to a higher, better standards as far as morals concerned, our peers, and also raising the babies, man, a particular way where they kind of are challenging themselves to break the norms of what we have to experience, man. It's the only way.
I agree with you. And, you know, the reason why I shared that WNBA image is something that we just touched upon, is that folks are coming together. People are, and Paul, you know, you're right. There is momentum. There is this momentum and this awareness that's building. And you know, us doing this talk tonight is part of that momentum that you're talking about. It is because we desire to keep this conversation going, because we desire the change that we know needs to happen. And, you know, because quite frankly, you know, our lives depend on it, you know,
Literally.
other people's lives depend on it. And so I really, you know, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank you guys for taking the time out to do that incredible mural. You know, I saw you guys out there. It was a lot of work. You didn't have to do it. And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for, you know, it's a gift that you've given to the world and to this neighborhood. Thank you for joining us tonight to discuss it. This is important for us as part of keeping this conversation going for racial equality, to end police brutality and murder. It's important for us to contribute. And so we're very thankful that you are down for the cause and you're about it and contributing to what's going on and doing a part and taking a stand. So thank you all very, very much for your time,
Cheers.
for your hard work, and we'll do it again.
And thank you too, Alan, man. You put a ton of work in there too, man. You amaze
hell
me
yeah.
with all your decision making. You're the man, Alan. So people need to know that Alan is putting in real
It
work.
was a pleasure working with
Blood,
you.
sweat, and tears, man.
I'm with it. I'm about it.
And we got to protect this mural at all costs, man, because you know it's illegal to have what is it sensitivity training and to discuss these things now.
Oh yes, I heard
So
about
you know that it might be a crime to have that up now, Blair.
Your post has been removed.
Oh man.
Well,
Hey.
Well, we're here. We're on the block. The mural is on the block of the Museum of Graffiti.
That's right.
For everybody out there listening, thank you very much for tuning in. This interview is being recorded and will live on Facebook and will also live on YouTube. And so, you know, folks can see this later if they've missed the beginning or whenever, and come and see the mural for yourself. If you're in Miami, if you're in South Florida, come down and see the mural. It's important for you to see it in person. If you want to learn more about the figures that are in the mural or the moments in history, go to YouTube, and you can go to Museum of Graffiti's page on YouTube. All those videos are there. You can learn about Tulsa, you can learn about Rosewood, you can learn about the Moors, you can learn about MOVE organization that we didn't get into tonight. You can learn about the Black Panther Party. You can learn about Colin Kaepernick and what he's doing. And so I highly recommend it. Visit us in Miami if you're around, see the wall. If it's at night, just come through. And if you're not part of the problem and you're part of fixing the problem, we love that. Get on the side of justice. Do something. You know, make sure you either vote, you go to a protest, you check people, and let's make this this world and this lifetime a better place for all of us.
Amen. And bail people out when they get locked up, guys.
Yeah, I get them.
Yeah.
Get them.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and much love to all of you guys. Peace.
Peace and love, y'all.
Peace and love.
Have a great evening, guys.
Likewise. Holla.
Peace.